A text message is being sent around Virginia that falsely frames this data center budget fight as a digital tax. I reject that framing. The actual fight is over whether data centers should keep a massive sales tax break on the expensive equipment that they use to operate: servers, cooling systems, network equipment, generators. That is the issue. Do not let the phrase digital tax make you think this is a tax on your phone, your email, your apps, or your digital life in general. This is not that. That is not the plain version. The plain version is this: Virginia has allowed qualifying data centers to buy major equipment without paying normal sales and use tax. That is the tax break right there for you. And now that tax break is being debated because the cost has grown far beyond the old estimates. If you got this digital tax text that I got that will be on the screen in front of you, if you got this text, drop your city in the comments. I want to know how far this message is spreading across Virginia and where it is, because public clarity starts when people compare receipts. I talked about this before with the Hamptons data center tours, the last video that came out through here, and all the reels that came with that. The concern then was simple. Why were officials being advised to move away from saying data centers and start saying digital infrastructure? That raised a red flag for me right then, point blank, period. This text message shows why. The project did not change. The language changed. Data centers became digital infrastructure. Ending a tax break became a digital tax. Public review became an attack on hardworking Virginians. That is not public clarity. This is nothing more than narrative control. And taxpayers deserve better than narrative control. Here is what is really being protected. When you and I buy most things, sales tax gets added. Now, qualifying data centers have been allowed to buy major equipment without paying that normal sales and use tax. Data centers can still pay other taxes. Local governments can still collect revenue from them. But this specific fight is about sales tax on equipment that make these facilities work. And data centers buy a lot of expensive equipment. They upgrade it, they replace it, they expand it. Because I don't know if you all know this, but especially from what I used to do in a former life, in a past life, technology keeps moving. So the equipment that we use every day, that cycles, it moves. You have to upgrade. That is how the cost grows. JLARC, which is Virginia's watchdog agency, says older estimates for the tax breaks were around 80 million to 100 million. That was the estimate at first when we first heard about this, when they first signed the agreement. That was the estimate. By fiscal year 2024, the estimate was over $1 billion. Axios reported the federal year 2025 savings between $1.6 billion and $1.9 billion. Again, I'm going to say that again because I want to make sure that we understand. Axios reported the federal year 25 savings from sales and tax use that the data centers are receiving is between $1.6 billion and $1.9 billion. That is not a small miss. That is a different conversation. When 100 million issue becomes $1 billion issue, the public does not need excuses. We don't need excuses. The public needs a review. That is why I support the sunset option. A sunset brings the deal back into the light. It forces lawmakers to explain the return. It forces the industry to show the value. It forces taxpayers to see the math. Because if the tax break works, prove it. If it still helps Virginia, show the numbers. If it needs changes fixed in it, then fix it. That is accountability. Now, add this new revenue forecast. Virginia Mercury reported that Virginia may have about 1.5 billion more than expected over the next 3 years. Virginia may have about 1.5 billion more than expected over the next 3 years. More revenue is better than less revenue. But look at the comparison. The state may have about 1.5 billion over the next 3 years. The data center tax break is being reported between 1.6 billion and 1.9 billion in 1 year. So the new revenue forecast does not make the issue go away. Doesn't even touch it. But that is some of the excuses. That is one of the excuses that leaders in Richmond are using. It makes the revenue review more urgent. The tax break is larger than the new 3-year cushion. That matters. When the budget gets tight, every tax break becomes a choice. Every delay becomes a choice. Every protected interest becomes a choice. And you deserve to know why that choice was made. That is why this digital tax message needs a response. Because what it always tends to do, it starts with fear. It claims lawmakers are making life less affordable. It claims hardworking Virginians will pay more. Then show the math. How much more? On which bill? By what proof? Because the receipt we already have says data centers are receiving a massive tax break on equipment. The receipts we already have says the cost grew far beyond the old estimate. The receipts we already have says this is now a $1 billion issue. So don't tell taxpayers to panic about a digital tax while leaving out the tax break being protected. That is not public clarity. That is a misleading frame. And if this kind of plain English breakdown helps you, follow this page. I read the receipt so you don't have to. Guess who is moving the money? Now, let's deal with the full picture. Data centers do bring value. They support construction work, which what we learned on the other video is temporary revenue for our cities and state. They help some local governments bring in tax revenue. They support the digital world we use every day. your phone, your apps, your email, your online banking, your cloud storage, your AI tools. All of that depends on data centers. But public value still has to be measured. Growth cannot just be measured by what gets built. It has to be measured by what we are left with. How many permanent jobs stay? How much local money comes in? How much pressure lands on the power grid? Who benefits? Who pays? What happens after the ribbon cutting? That is due diligence. That is what you do before you sign off on something this big. And this is not stay in Richmond. It can affect power planning. It can affect schools, roads, healthcare. It can affect what local governments have to plan around. And for communities near data centers, it can land even closer. As we talked about in the other video, power demand, water questions, noise, land use, substations, transmission lines, trust. That is why people should be brought into the conversation before a deal already has momentum, not after. Here is the part that does not sit right with me. When regular people need help, government asks for proof. Show your income, show your paperwork, your need, meet the deadline, fill out the form, and wait for your turn. How many of us have heard that? But when one of the wealthiest industries in the world receives a massive tax break, review suddenly becomes controversial. No. Taxpayers live under accountability every day. We do. You watching this video do. Large corporations should live under accountability when public money is involved. Elected leaders should not be afraid to ask for it. That is why Senator Louise Lucas's sunset position matters. It forces the conversation into the open. Other leaders may want a different path. Some may want to keep the tax breaks with conditions. Some may want energy requirements. Some may want smaller tax break. Some may want the current structure to continue. Put the options on the table, but show taxpayers the trade-off. What does Virginia get back? What protects taxpayers? What risk comes from each option? That is the debate. Not scare text, not a soft rebrand, not a slogan about hardworking Virginians while the actual tax break stays hidden. My position is very simple. Sunset the exemption, then build a better version if the facts support it. A better version could be smaller, it could be targeted, it could be tied to energy standards, it could require stronger public reporting. It could require clear community impact review. It could show jobs, investment, tax value, and protections for the people who live with the outcome. That is basic discipline. Virginia can lead in technology and still review a $1 billion tax break. The closest company, mind you, we have 604 data centers. The closest states to us, which is Texas, etc., already don't have this exemption. So you see, those two things are not enemies. That is responsible leadership. And for Hampton, this principle matters right now. This is a statewide budget fight, but the standard is local. You should not be the last person to understand a decision that may affect your cost of living. You should not have to decode the budget. You shouldn't. You should not have to decode budget language to know who is being protected. You should not find out after the deal already has momentum. That is why I believe in public clarity. Show the work, explain the why, put the receipts where people can see them. and do not call something progress if taxpayers are the ones paying the hidden cost. The investment question also needs facts. If the industry says Virginia could lose investment, show the model. Which investment? Which jobs, local revenue, and which communities? And what is the risk of keeping the tax break unchanged? Do not bring fear by itself. Fear is not a budget strategy. Facts are. If the industry truly needs support to stay competitive, Virginia can design a better policy. If certain areas need investment, Virginia can target support there. If taxpayers need protections, Virginia can require that too. This is not all or nothing. It's discipline or autopilot. And I choose discipline. So here is the plain version. Data centers matter. The tax break is expensive. But this is money that could be going to you and your family. This cost has grown far beyond the old estimates. The digital text message leaves out the most important facts. Virginia should review the deal because the deal changed. When $100 million issue becomes $1 billion issue, you deserve more than momentum. You deserve math, you deserve receipts, you deserve the truth. So yes, I support the sunset option. Let the exemption expire earlier. Then make the case again in daylight. If it still works, prove it. If it needs changes, fix it. If the benefits no longer match the cost, stop pretending the old deal still fits this new reality. Virginia can support technology without surrendering accountability. Virginia can welcome investment without writing blank checks. Virginia can build for the future without leaving you out of the math. That is the standard. Residents first, growth with purpose, public clarity. No billion-dollar tax break should be permanent without proof. If it still works, prove it. If it does not, fix it. If the taxpayers are paying the price, taxpayers deserve the truth. If you got the digital tax text, again, please drop your city in the comments. Share this with someone who needs the plain version, and follow this page for public clarity with receipts. I don't just serve Hampton, even though Hampton is a lot of my material because that's where I live. That's also where I'm running for Hampton City Council. But the Commonwealth is a topic that I get on obviously a lot, like this one, and also the national as well. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. Have a great day.